Alright, I have a couple questions for you guys, and I need some honest answers to this. How many of you know what a 401k or Roth IRA is? How many of you know how to handle student loans? How many know exactly how credit works? How many of you know how to take out a loan? Why do these questions matter? Well, all these questions have to do with personal finance. And personal finance is a very widespread and diverse subject that requires a lot of attention and time to learn and understand. Over the course of this speech, we'll look at starting to learn these topics early and how that influences savings, and also the idea of credit and how that relates to debt. After delving into these different areas, it becomes evident that in order to best prepare us as college students for the real world, that every high school should implement a personal finance class. And these statistics alone display that there's a need for this class. These should all be 100%, but they're not. Let's first begin with what it means to start early. And I talk about high school because that's when we get our first jobs and start making our own money. But it's also the time that every single student in the U.S. is in college or is in class. Only 65.9% of students continue on to college, which that means 34.1%, or roughly 1/3 of the population, doesn't continue on to college. So to reach everyone in the nation, it makes sense to implement it into a high school. And starting early in life allows one the experience to start young when it doesn't really matter if you lose some money or not, but you're also learning valuable life skills that you can start applying to your life. I relate personal finance a lot to sports. In sports, you start at a young age and you start the basics, learning from the ground up, and you start repeating those habits. And over time, you start to get better and better at those. You never see a 17-year-old thrown straight into the major leagues. They work their way up from like high school to college and then to the professionals. And finances is the exact same. You don't want to be thrown right into the real world making real money with no practical experience on what to do with that money. It's only setting us as college students up to fail. Not only that, but in a study conducted by Joanne Kuntz, who has a PhD in financial management, she found out that high school students who get more experience to these topics of finances in turn have better savings rates. So that alone, just getting the experience, results in students practicing what they're being taught. Not only that, but in another study done by Jane Clark, she says that the most important time in your life is this time in high school and college, because it's the time that you can start putting money away towards retirement that begins to compound and grow over time. And she later goes on to explain more what 401ks and Roth IRAs are, and says how important they are to begin learning these things early so you can start practicing them now. These studies display that these concepts need to be learned early to set all of us up for success later on down the road. Now let's look at the credit and the debt side of this. And when people think of credit, they normally correlate it with debt, and for the most part, that's correct. But there is a good side to this misconceived idea. In a study done by Joseph Goetz, who has a PhD in economics and financial planning, he found that 84% of college students have credit cards, and half of those have more than 4 credit cards. So many of you may be thinking there's no real need for this class because we all know what credit is and how it works. What you don't know is that the undergraduate debt rate is increasing by 46% annually. And that statistic is pretty shocking and shows that we're not well informed on these subjects. Not only that, but students view credit cards as free money because they don't really see the money coming out of their account directly. And we take a look at this graph, and it shows that 46%, or almost half the nation's debt, is credited to credit card debt. And that is because credit cards are dangerous and they're very addicting because you don't technically see the money going out. And this displays that there's a need to inform people on this idea. And this leads to compulsive buying, causing students to make more purchases, which puts them into even more debt than they originally thought. And this was later proved in a study by Aysel Fagerstrom, who found that college students' uncontrollable spending habits is way higher than that of the public. Now this displays that there is a need for this class, and it raises an even bigger concern because we as college students don't have a steady income, so when we do start making debt, we have no way to actually pay it off, so then it just keeps building over time. And ASEL, later on in the study, found out that when more debt, like student loans, is added to this credit card debt, that this debt will follow you into your adult life and burden you for making bigger decisions down the road. And it also causes you to have a low credit score. And having a low credit score is not a good thing, because when it comes time to making a bigger financial decision like buying a house or getting a car, a bank is not going to give you a loan when you have a low credit score. So it's important to start learning how to establish good credit now, so that when we have to make these big financial decisions later on, we have the good credit score to allow us to make those decisions. Credit and debt go pretty hand in hand, and no matter how hard anyone tries, most likely everyone's going to experience some form of debt in their life. Debt is almost inevitable, but there's good ways to handle debt that are healthy, and with a class, they can teach us how to handle these ways effectively. And it's when these topics aren't discussed that they become an issue. If we take a look at this graph, we see that the U.S. public debt as a percentage of GDP has been steadily increasing, as we can see from this line right here, for the past 18 years, and it's going to continue to increase for the next 9 years. And the scary part about this is within several years, the nation's debt to GDP is going to reach almost 100%. And that statistic alone should scare everyone. The United States prides themselves on how far in advance they are to everyone else in every aspect, yet are so far into debt that it takes away from the credibility as a nation. Now, there's nothing we can really do to change these statistics now, but with proper education earlier on in life, we can start to cut back at this daunting statistic right here. Now, as you can tell, we just looked at two different topics of personal finance, and there's plenty of more topics that fall under this, but they're all very complex and complicated topics that require a lot of time and attention to learn. When finances are not taught in the proper way, it has instrumental impacts on people's lives down the road. So why don't we set up students with the most possible success by giving them the tools they need now to succeed later on in life? Now let's bring this full circle. After examining all the two different elements of personal finance and the effects that they can have on students, it becomes evident that every high school should implement a class to better prepare all of us for our future endeavors. Now, some of you may disagree with this idea, but these statistics right here display that there is a need for this. And maybe these stats that we looked at earlier would look a little bit different if we got the proper education earlier on in our lives.